Good morning, everyone, and welcome to CreamyCast. I'm live here in the 802 studio in Barrie, 802 Scoop, excuse me. Welcome to the show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I have a pretty interesting topic that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about fighting oligarchy in Vermont. What does that actually look like? So you have Bernie Sanders. He's out on this tour around the country talking about fighting oligarchy and all this great stuff, and I'm being a little facetious there. But anyway, we'll get right into that. But first, I just want to welcome my two guests to the studio here today. Both of these ladies have been with me on so many steps of my personal journey in the Vermont political sphere, now the media business and that kind of stuff. But they've really kind of been with me every step of the way, and I've gotten to know them throughout some of my experiences. And of course, many of you know one of them quite well, but the one that I have here today too, who I'll introduce in just a second, she's here to introduce a pretty interesting event that's going to be taking place next week here in the Vermont State House. So with that, I welcome both Alison Despathy and Amy Hornblas to the studio. Guys, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Paul.
Thank you.
Of course.
Excited to talk.
And I just want to say quickly, this is, we've done a few shows like this where there's been a couple of people here in the studio, but if there are any audio issues, anyone out there listening, please feel free to let me know in the chat, and you can do that by commenting below just like you would just about anywhere else. So please make sure, if you can't hear, please be sure to let us know. But anyway, let's get right into it. So somebody is coming to the State House next week. Somebody pretty interesting. I won't spoil the beans. Maybe you could let us know, Amy. So Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What's going on next week?
Yeah, well, we have a national speaker coming, and I know people are going to be really curious to get to know her and spend some time with her because Mary Holland is CEO and President of Children's Health Defense, which is the organization that Robert F. Kennedy started, and he recently resigned from it because now he's moved on to other political roles. He can no longer be running this nonprofit. But Mary Holland is a lawyer. She has a lot of experience with medical choice and health freedom issues, informed consent issues, and kind of the science and the liability issues. And so she's going to be bringing all of her expertise to the Vermont State House to talk with legislators specifically and the public, because we figure that people probably have all sorts of questions right now, like what's this Make America Healthy Again, and why are you talking about vaccines, and why are you talking about food, and why are you, all of these subjects. So we're really going to focus on children's health. We're really looking for common ground where people can come together. I feel like health is the one place where hopefully, no matter what our political leanings are, we can come together. And we do see an increase in deaths here in Vermont, and I can get into that another time, but if folks look at the Vermont Health Department statistics, they will see that since 2020, and then 2021 it got even higher, and then 2022 even higher, we've got a growing, starkly growing death rate in Vermont. We have a growing children's health, chronic health disease rate. We have schools that are closing periodically because they simply don't have enough staff and students to attend because they're so sick. We have my bank closed for a couple days a couple weeks ago because too many people were ill to come to work. Now, I don't remember all of this happening before COVID. And so what were the measures that were taken? That's my big question, is my question through all of this, what's brought me to the front lines as I'm a health educator, but it was really the need for a cost-benefit analysis of these interventions.
Yeah, no, and I know you definitely have an affiliate. What brings you to the connection with Mary Holland? So so I know you're a health educator. But I know you're involved in some other organizations, and I want to be sure that we highlight them because I know that there's other folks involved here too. So talk to me a little about that.
So this is super exciting. So my name is Amy Hornblas. I'm a health teacher, and when in 2020 when they locked down my school and I was teaching pre-K through 8th grade students, it was incredibly traumatizing for everybody. So I was really worried about that. Then they suggested using masks, and I had never heard of masks before. So I started doing research and found out that they are not safe or effective. There's no real world research that actually shows either of those things. In fact, they're very can be dangerous and can actually help spread disease. So I made masks my focus. I've researched, I've done a study of the across the state to find out the harms. So that kind of brought me to the front row because no one else was speaking about this. And
that's how I first met you, I believe. Is when you were, was that back in 2022 when you were doing that? I
started
survey?
In 2020.
Oh,
I started
wow.
it the summer of 2020. I said, whoa, what is this,
Okay.
And I've been just beating that drum and trying to bring attention. And with the media censorship and everything, it's been really tricky. But the ice is thawing, guys. I want everybody to know that it's cracking apart. And there are fissures there, and we can come through and start talking about this now. More legislators want to talk about it. More people want to talk about it, not just the masks, but all these other things. So about 2 months ago, I stepped up and became director of Vermont Stands Up. So people may know what Vermont Stands Up is. It started back in the early days of the COVID lockdowns to bring people together, to organize around health choice issues. And it was sort of floundering as far as what was its status, who wanted to step up and lead it. And I just jumped up and said, somebody's got to, can I?
Thankfully.
And thankfully, it all worked out. So I've been busy kind of single-handedly, but as soon as we get through this legislative session, I am going to reach out to all the Vermont Stands Up members, to our former county leaders, and we're going to get folks involved to help me because this is a lot of work, but it's a lot of incredible opportunities. We're going to do more gatherings. We're going to get things rolling again because now's the time to really focus on health choice. And so I've teamed up as Vermont Stands Up director. We've teamed up with Children's Health Defense New England. Vicki Master is a chiropractor down in southern Vermont. She couldn't be here today because it's a bit of a drive, but she will be.
I hope she's out there listening, and I do apologize to her for not. We maybe talked about trying to do some hybrid virtual, but we unfortunately weren't able to make it happen. I'm sorry she's not here in the studio, but we got to get in. I do want to have her in here. Someday we make it happen.
Right, she'll be at the State House.
She will be at the State.
She's going to be at the State House, and you're going to interview Mary Holland.
I am going to interview Mary Holland. I know. It's going to be. Honestly, that's a big interview, man. That's a really big one. I'm a little nervous.
And I have to say, I didn't know who mary Holland was. I've just been so busy fighting things on the front lines. I really don't have a lot of time to watch.
I know.
Children's Health Defense TV, even though I'd love to, that would be the channel I'd watch because they cover a lot of great stuff. And so I've just been learning about who she is. She was just on the High Wire, so if anybody watching out there can find thehighwire.com, you'll see
Del Bigtree's
Del Bigtree's television program there, or online program, and he just interviewed Mary Holland last week. Perfect. So you can see a hot off the press, what is she talking about? She's talking about all the important issues, and we're just so excited to bring her to Montpelier.
That's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to go watch that interview, maybe just to prep myself a little bit before asking her questions myself, because I have, of course, tons of things I'd like to ask her about. But I do think it's important just quickly to highlight Vermont Stands Up. This is their website, and this is what they say their mission is on the website. Folks who are out there, this says our mission is to promote awareness, education, and effective action on issues that impact the health, safety, and prosperity of all Vermonters, with a focus on the pursuit of truth and balance and information, civic accountability and justice, health autonomy, and environmental integrity. And that's just part of it. But if you want to go check out vermontstandsup.org and you want to learn more about the organization, I have a comment here from Todd who says, he's commenting live on X, he says, I joined Vermont Stands Up, woohoo!
Nice. Yes,
so
woohoo.
If you're out there and you're wondering, how can I engage with the health freedom conversation in my state and learn what's going on, check out Vermont Stands Up. That's and it sounds like Children's Health Defense Coalition New England. If you're out, and that's another. These are the organizations that are bringing in Mary Holland, inviting her into the state. So I don't mean to steal any more of your thunder, but I just wanted to say that and put that out there for folks, just to make it very obvious.
Yeah, and thanks for showing folks the website.
Of course.
If people join, what that means is you'll begin to get the blasts, so the email blasts that I send out to our 1,500 members.
Yep.
And if folks have news that they want me to post, so we're going to make it like a clearinghouse for all the information that we want to share with each other that the mainstream press or other places like Front Porch Forum don't let us have these conversations. I can't tell you how many platforms I was censored from. And organizations I was censored from that I used to be a member of when I started speaking about people need to breathe. I don't know. For some reason, that's a controversial thing.
So many of us went through that. I know I was kicked off Front Porch Forum probably 2 years ago because of the clean heat standard stuff, trying to put some of the health choice stuff in there. So there's such a need for this in the state. I think we need to have these real conversations, and it's trying to line up a space and a place we can do it. It's so exciting. It's coming back in.
Yeah. And thank
really
you,
good.
Paul, for this kind of platform. And the Daily Chronicle,
Happy to
really
do
what
it.
Yes.
we wouldn't even know about each other if we didn't have these places, and I love how grassroots they are. It's really great.
No, and that's something that we're trying to continue here at the Chronicle. I think what's made us so relevant and successful in the last year is that it is grassroots, and it is coming from a place of we just genuinely care about these issues.
Yeah.
There's really no other, and I come from a similar place as you both too, where it's you go through this COVID situation over the last 4 years, or really I guess it's a little bit more than that now, and it definitely brought me to a place where I thought, man, I got to start focusing more on how I can solve some of these issues locally.
Right.
How can I engage? So I ran for office, and that's how I ended up meeting both of you. I mean, I think maybe Alison and I might have met you separately some other time through Rob Williams, maybe.
Yeah.
But to now find myself in this place where, I feel as if the Chronicle's one of the leading news sources in the state, and I think that other people would agree to that. That comes from, Front Porch Forum, censoring certain topics, certain conversations. I mean, if you mention geoengineering, apparently, on Front Porch Forum, I've been hearing that you get banned. I don't use Front Porch Forum, I never have, but the point that I'm trying to make is, the more that you try to suppress all these voices and all these different ideas, or the truth, if you try to suppress the truth, by the way.
It's going to come out.
It's going to come out.
It is.
And actually, it'll come out in tenfold, and that's kind of what I seem to think is happening.
I've always said that truth is like water. It will always find its way through, and we see that continuing to happen. And I think that's why Vermont Daily Chronicle and the work that you're doing, and also with Vermont Stands Up, is so successful, because it's really 100% supporting this free speech piece. We've got to talk about these things. They've got to come out so we can work through it and figure out the best path. And that's what's thriving right now, is people demanding and really needing and wanting this to happen.
And it's okay to be wrong, and I think that's the other thing with the Chronicle. People, I think they misunderstand, or they underestimate how seriously we take freedom of speech at the Chronicle.
Right.
To the point where, it's okay to be wrong. If you're going to be wrong, we'd rather you expressed that wrong thought and allow it to be criticized, rather than just not hear it at all. It's I'd rather that there was somebody. I wouldn't want somebody to be running around with false ideas in their head, but they're too afraid to express them, and then maybe some. So you see what I'm getting? It's a much larger issue, but I take it so seriously. And I mean, I look at every single issue that's coming through the Vermont State House right now, and I see this in everywhere.
Yeah.
Free speech is in everything.
Yeah.
I see it in everything. I see it everywhere.
Yes.
And I can't. Once you see that lens, once you see everything through that lens, it's hard to undo that. But just one quick thing, and I just want to show. This is the. I love showing stuff on the screen.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. It's
Multimedia.
It helps.
It helps a lot.
It does.
But this is the flyer for the event. So Thursday, April 10th, Vermont State House, 1 to 3 p.m. in room 10, which I believe is downstairs.
Yes.
Room 10. Is that the same room that they rented out for the?
Across the hall.
way.
Okay.
Across the way.
Okay. So if you were at the detransitioning event, just across the hall is where this event will be hosted. I hope that there's not as much opposition to that event, to this event.
I think we'll all be good.
I don't think there will
Yeah.
be, though. I don't think there will be. I think people. My guess is that I could be wrong.
But we hope that people come out and just ask questions. We're just
Yes.
looking to engage good,
Exactly.
honest conversations around this, so we can all learn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Exactly.
But April 10th, Vermont State House, and so that's the full information there, folks. And we'll post this to the Chronicle again, put it all out there, and feel free to reach out too if you have questions. And if they wanted to reach out to you, Amy, they can too. How would they?
So you can find more on the website too. We have a whole page about it. You can also email me at info@vermontstandsup.org.
Okay.
So you can email me directly. But also, Mary is going to be testifying in the morning. We don't know what time, to the House Healthcare Committee. So when we find out what time that is, we'll let folks know because people might want to either stream or show up and see that in person. Then she's going to have 2 radio interviews, one with you and then one with Jerry Procaccini from WMRW. She's going to be having lunch in the cafeteria, so there's plenty of times to mingle
the whole
with her.
day.
She's giving a whole State House day
Yeah.
with us.
And then from
Oh,
1 to
boy.
3, we have, she's going to be speaking. We have a representative, Todd Nielsen, who's going to be speaking,
Yep.
who's one of the, sponsoring some of these bills. And then we're going to have a panel with Alison and Todd Nielsen and Mary, facilitated by Lincoln Centers from
Oh, yeah.
Braver Angels.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
this,
that's
this is
awesome.
not a
Yeah.
Braver Angels event, but I called on him because of his experience
Right.
with these conversations. We're really hoping for a conversation. We really want people who are going, whoa, this is out of left field. I don't understand any of this. Why is Mary talking about this? We want those people to come. And we want to be able to come together. Like we've been craving. I think us
Yeah.
who've gone through this whole COVID thing where we were censored by our families, by our associates, we just want to be understood. We want to be heard.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that folks who maybe don't see things the same way we do have some curiosity,
Right.
And Lincoln really phrased it really well in an email to me the other day about what a perfect mix that is. You've got people who want to be heard with people who are curious, right? I mean, this is it's really, this is so healing. I see the opportunities being really healing.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think that's and I don't think it can be understated too. Just how much I feel like we can't just sweep what happened under the rug with COVID. And I think that
And they want to do that.
people want to do that,
Really
and I
bad.
think it's because people know, oh wait, we were wrong. But there needs to be, and I don't say this word with any level of like punishment, but there needs to be retribution. There needs to be some
Accountability.
or
Cost, like a real analysis.
it needs to be addressed,
Yes.
right? And I think that they're going to try to. RFK, Make America Healthy Again, like they're really doing things. It appears, at this time, like they're doing things to try to long term make sure stuff like this doesn't continue to happen. But again, we need to look back. We can't just walk away from this
Right.
and say nothing.
And I will say the state of New Hampshire did a sort of retrospect. They had a really big study that they published on what we did well, what we did wrong, how we can improve it as well. And the other thing is, Make America Healthy Again is sort of up there and national and big, but I think all of us are also very, because of the grassroots work, focused on Vermont. What is the action that we can take here? What do we need to do here? And the other thing that I would say, just with Mary coming in, hopefully she will get that time in healthcare, because some of our bills for health choice obviously are there. And I think it's important for people to understand that right now, the majority of doctors, not out of ill will or anything nefarious, but they're not offering patients true informed consent.
Yeah.
That's not happening in the doctor's offices when people go in, especially on the issue of vaccines. And this is where not only it's trying to have the conversations, but it's also the education. We want people to know about the benefit risk analysis so they can be making informed decisions. I think that's the other aspect of this, is that education piece. And we're really hoping that people will come out and be part of the conversation so we can all learn and talk it through together.
Yeah, and Mary's coming to Vermont specifically. I mean, she has the connections with the Children's Health Defense here in New England, but she also has a belief that we have a chance here in Vermont,
Yeah.
and we do, and that's
We
how
do.
we feel when
Right.
we're up there at the State House all the time, and
Right.
same with you, Paul. Right? It's small enough that we can make those personal connections.
Yes,
And we're low enough to the ground. We actually have our hands in the dirt, most of us. We really do understand the lay of the land.
Right.
It's Guy said this the other day to me, and we were talking with somebody else who we're trying to kind of get in a little bit more engaged into the Vermont political thing, and we just were saying like, hey, if there's a state where one person could make an impact, it's Vermont.
It
I mean,
is.
look,
We know
look
that.
at us
I know. Look
three.
at
All
us
of
three.
us.
But the reality. I mean, like I could name off a list of folks that just all of us working just a little bit towards
Right.
the common goal.
Right.
I mean, I've been blown away. Like if anything, last year, what this last election cycle taught me was actually you can take action and it does work, and you're allowed to have hope actually that good people will be put in the right places.
Exactly.
And I'm not talking about the national elections. I'm talking about what happened here in Vermont.
Right.
And I think that you're right. There's a reason that she's coming here. And I mean, I'm seeing all sorts of interest from many different groups all over the country right now in what's happening in Vermont.
Right.
Why is what's happening there happening? A state is going to change. It seems like it is. And I think you're spot on in saying that she's coming here for a reason. There's.
Can I actually read a quote on this?
Yeah.
I just received this morning, speaking of an awesome Vermonter, Melon Kennedy. She's an
Yes.
interfaith pastor. Her quote today was so perfect for this conversation. I'm just going to read it. It's by a Nobel Prize-winning scientist, chemist, Isla, I don't want to wreck the last name, but Prigogine. And this is it. When a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. And I instantly thought of Vermont. We can do this. We can do this right. There's so many good people here, so many people who care. So I just wanted to share that. I thought it was perfect timing.
That is because on my way into work, I had to go to work really early this morning at like 5 a.m. and the birds were just starting to fly and everything. And I had this moment where harmony, the concept of harmony just came washing over me, and that's what we're working on. And I love that because once you form that coherence and that harmony, I feel like I'm more in harmony since COVID, since I had to start speaking the truth. There were a lot of things I was not speaking up about when I was a teacher, a lot of things I was learning to realize what I'm teaching is not right. I'm not teaching actual facts, but I had to, the politics and the walk the line. And, but once I freed myself from that, I feel so much more in harmony, and magic happen. I mean, amazing miracles happen. And if you just spend, 5 hours a week, put it towards something that you care about, amazing things happen. The universe steps right up and meets you right where you're at and just pops doors open left and right.
I completely agree. I think that's we say we want a level of accountability and retribution. Those are all great things, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but in many ways what happened in 2020, COVID, was one of the best things that ever happened to me, and I think a lot of other individuals out there who used it as an opportunity to evaluate their lives and say, wait a minute, it was a reset, ultimately. Wait a minute, what are the things that I'm doing with my life just automatically and without thought? I mean, it kind of just broke that rhythm for everybody, right? That rhythm of life that we were all so used to. I mean, I can tell you from my own experience, like as a kid and then a college student, it was like I had this idea of what a normal lifestyle was like. And like, mom and dad go to work and we go to school and we come home, have dinner, and then we watch the news, and then the next day, and then the weekend. But I think that whole structure for a lot of us, I know for myself, it's completely gone. I mean, I definitely still work throughout the week pretty normally, but that idea, it's completely different.
I think it also launched that civic engagement of if we're not tuned in and paying attention, a lot of stuff is going to happen that we don't want or don't agree with or isn't helping Vermont and Vermonters. So I think it launched, of all of us and many other people into that whole sort of realm of we're paying attention, we're watching, we're going to be part of this conversation. We want to make sure this is done right because it's messy. Politics is so messy, and there's, like you said before, so much you get right, so much you get wrong, so much stuff to be sorted out, so many people to hear from, and we want to make sure that it's happening properly so we don't end up with bad policy. And honestly, I have to say it. That's what happened the past several years with the supermajority. And we need to clean that up. There's a lot of bad policy and law that came into play. And so that's where I feel the more that us on a grassroots level, Vermonters, are involved in this civic duty, so to speak, that you always hear about, but now you understand. COVID was I got to be involved in this.
That's right.
Yeah, it's huge.
No, I think you're so right, and it almost makes me think that for the last 20 plus years, the state has been basically sleepwalking. And I say the state, I mean most of the populace, except for a minority of people who have gotten in there and they've figured out how to work the game and use the laws and the systems and the way that laws are written to basically gear the whole state towards an economy that works for their best interests and not also, for the people of the state.
And I think also I think we could even sort of roll that back to the influence of the media and the propaganda around things like agendas and ideology that also sort of take over. And so then they're not in there representing or doing the good work of the people. They're in there really trying to push the agenda or the ideology, which, up here sort of ideally makes sense, but what are the real world impacts? And that's what's been ignored. And we're seeing that play out with the effects, and that's what needs to get fixed. So it's just representing, remembering that it's not about an agenda, it's not about an ideology, it's about representing the people and really doing what's right for Vermont. And I know that that's what we're all working towards. Yeah.
And left or right, by the way.
Right.
Left or
Right.
right. You know, and
Right.
I've definitely in the last 6 months had to reevaluate where do I actually stand on the political spectrum, and been realizing that, you know, if I might feel one way about this thing, and that's a conservative sentiment, well, that's just one sentiment. That doesn't mean I have to adopt all of these feelings and ideas that is what's considered to be conservative. Right. And we put each other into these boxes. And I know it's like people love to talk about, oh, I'm an independent, I want to be this, but I still think even people that call themselves independents, and myself included, we find ourselves wrangled into these like thought categories or silos.
Right.
And it's definitely, I think that's being steered. We're being steered that direction, because I think if you actually gave the individual complete autonomy over their lives and the ability to think, and you weren't constantly being steered like this, then we wouldn't suffer, I think, so much from tyranny. We wouldn't suffer so much from authoritarianism. And I mean that in the U.S., but I mean, I think this is happening elsewhere too. But you know, if people just thought for themselves and created their own government, created their own systems, but we depend on these thought little patterns and groupings, and we got to figure out how to get out of that.
Right, and not having people sort of mandate and tell us, and I mean, that's a lot of stuff we can talk about with the State House for so long, like, this is your heat, and this is your car, and this is what you're going to do, this is your education, and it's like, whoa, 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 people need options, people need choices, this is so, so important, and that's what really in the past several years with the supermajority was really being sort of eroded. And we need to get back to, yes, we want to do things right, but people need options.
Yeah,
and we can't take that away.
We can't force them to make a choice based on whether or not we want a certain industry to succeed. We're not picking winners and losers.
Oh my gosh,
you know?
there we go.
And we're gonna get into that, but that was a comment that was made by a Barrie City representative, like, and that's honestly, when we covered that last week on our show on the Chronicle, and it was like kind of like at the end of the show, we didn't really give it, I think, the attention it deserved, and Guy agreed, because apparently it was pretty concerning to a lot of people. And you know, it's just the type of things that, once again, COVID was one of the best things that ever happened, because if we didn't have these little recording devices in all of the committee rooms where they're recording it and live streaming, which was a product of COVID because everybody had to stay at home in the 6 feet, blah, 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 whatever, we wouldn't have this recording. We wouldn't have all the... I think if people didn't actually see it for themselves when they see those videos, and I was having this conversation with Paul Dame yesterday and a handful of other people, if they didn't actually see this stuff for themselves, they never would believe what their legislators are saying.
Right.
They would be like, no, they wouldn't say that. That's you're just making that up. Fox News. What are you talking about?
But it's so true.
It is true.
And more people are watching, and there's more access, fortunately. So... yeah.
So I do want to just read a couple comments. We really love to highlight comments here on the show. I have Todd. I don't know who Todd is. I don't know his last name. I can't see his picture very well. But he says, "Heck yeah, guys! Thank you for starting this, for sharing this." Lambert Saldi writes, "Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having these two ladies on great information." You guys know Bert Saldi. Yeah. USA, the Vermonter. And then Beyond Skeptic writes, "Funny who you see on X. Who knew?" I don't know what you mean by that. Maybe you know one of these two guests that I have here, but hey, thanks for tuning in, and maybe let us know what you mean by that. I love this. I love the cryptic message, though. Thank you. Maureen Heck writes, Maureen Heck. I'm sorry if I said that wrong.
Maureen.
She says, "Communism, World Economic Forum, global agendas," and that is exactly what it is. And I think that's a perfect point to kind of segue into some of the broader conversation that we want to have today about the Vermont State House. And you know, we definitely try to maintain a focus here on local issues, especially anytime we're podcasting. Guy and I always talk about what's happening in the committee rooms, what's going on. But it does seem that there is a larger agenda, a larger push at a maybe regional, global level, where in the so-called West, there's kind of a drive towards communism, Marxism, and that kind of goes back to what I was just talking about with Teddy Wasasak. And I find it to be so interesting that we live here in Vermont, and these types of ideologies are always coming out. And of course, you know, our senator Bernie Sanders is one of the main driving forces in that conversation in Marxism. Actually, when we interviewed General Flynn this last summer, General Mike Flynn, Trump's former national security advisor, he told us, Bernie really is an independent, but he is really a communist. He's or a Marxist. He's a full-blown Marxist socialist. He's not kidding around about it. He really believes it too.
Right.
He really is.
Right.
For better or worse, whatever you think of Bernie Sanders' ideology, I do believe that some of the stuff he says is true, right? And Alison, you and I have talked extensively about what Bernie is doing right now and what he's saying, it resonates with so many people because some of it is real, right?
Can't argue with that. The poor are getting poorer, the rich are getting richer.
Yeah, and I think I think that's obvious to people.
That's where I had been landing recently, just in watching Becca Balint sort of out there just so angry and screaming on this 50-51 and watching Senator Sanders on it and just thinking to myself, oh my goodness, okay, there's so many people out there screaming and protesting and rallying, but if you just look in Vermont, there's so much action. Bernie's been screaming about this for decades. What's it, like 4 decades now? But it's like, what is the real world action? How do you fight tyranny? And you just have to look in Vermont and say, okay, we're going to stand up for each other. We're going to stand up for our local economy. We're going to stand up for our local businesses. Look what the fuel dealers just went through. Heating homes, keeping people alive, contributing to their communities, and look how they were just attacked. I mean, that was a full-on attack by the legislature because of the Global Warming Solutions Act. Like, that's unacceptable. And now we're watching it play out with the cars and trucks, the advanced clean cars and trucks going on, with Vermont following some of the California laws. And we can get into that in a little bit, but watching it, and that's where it's like, how do you take Bernie's message? We all know oligarchy, we all know fascism, but how does it play out in your real world? How is it happening at the State House here? And that's the piece where I think it's so important for people to understand what's happening to our local businesses. What is happening to people who are just trying to work hard and make a living and pay their bills, and how is our legislature, the supermajority, especially in the past several years, making that more difficult? I have a young son. I just had a new grandson who was born, and it's like,
congratulations, Alison.
Thank you. I know, it's so exciting. All is well, and they're all good, which is so amazing. And I just look at this young couple, and I'm like, I want them to be able to thrive here.
That's right.
And so much of what the State House supermajority had been doing was squashing the people, squashing the business, again, because
squashing dreams.
I know, seriously.
Squashing dreams.
Literally, because of this ideology and agenda piece. And that's where I just wish that people could take the energy of going out to these protests with Bernie and engage it in the State House with their local legislators and say, hey, wait a minute. We don't treat people like this. This is not what we do. And I think the Advanced Clean Car, Chair Walker of the House Transportation Committee just had this amazing presentation put together by some of the truck and car companies that are just about to get hit with this Advanced Clean Car initiative.
That's right.
And I don't know if it's like, I want to get into the details of that because I think it's
That's fine.
just...
Let's get right into it.
Okay, it's just like the Clean Heat Standard was doing to these local fuel dealers with this attack. And so basically what is going on is in 2022, the Agency of Natural Resources adopted a rule for accepting the California Advanced Clean Car Initiative, which is pushing these electric vehicle mandates for cars, for trucks, for tractor trailers, etc. And it's so dangerous. And it was, again, this is the problem with the Climate Council and why the Climate Council either needs to be dismantled or all of their action needs to be more sort of guidance and advisory. And we do have bills to do that, but they haven't really been taken up. But the Climate Council put together the Climate Action Plan, and in the Climate Action Plan, they suggested that the Agency of Natural Resource adopt these rules. So they did that because we're mandated to meet these emission reductions, right? And this is so dangerous for Vermont because it's unrealistic.
So wait a minute, I just want to stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
This is something that the agency just adopted.
They adopted through the Legislative Council on Administrative Rules because the Climate Action Plan suggested this from the Climate Council. And this, oh, go ahead, sorry.
So the legislature didn't enact this.
It never went through the legislature, which is horrible.
That seems like it shouldn't even be legal.
Exactly.
It's not legal.
That's been my concern the whole time because they never got to hear from all the car dealers and truck dealers.
There's no
and
public input.
The impact of this.
Right.
There was some to a degree, but not that you would get in a really good legislative legislative process.
So this has been kind of the conversation too that I've been having with Matt Cota. It's like he's explained it to me a handful of times, and I'm not trying to cut you off.
No, go.
But I think it is really it's an interesting thing that we live in this country now where you have. Like, what do people really want, right? Like, they're going out and destroying Teslas and just burning them, and it's like, wait a minute, didn't we want these? What is going on? Like, it's so bizarre.
I
so
know.
how,
And
what can government win here? Can we do anything right? It's just very weird, honestly.
And I think that's where you go back to just sort of those basic values of how do you treat others, how do you treat people. And if we can remind ourselves of that, then we would know we would absolutely never do this to people and our local businesses. And we're seeing it play out in New York and Massachusetts right now, and it's an absolute disaster. The infrastructure is not set up for the electrical vehicles right now, for the trucks. I mean, I can get into some of the details, but I want to go back to what Bill Smith from the Vermont Truck and Bus Association.
I know Bill.
He made a really important point after Chair Walker, House Transportation, allowed this conversation. And I just want to say, I have so much respect for him, how he's running his committee, letting the other legislators on the committee say, hey, we want to look at this bill, we want to look at that bill, let's hear from them. This bill is not even in his committee, but because he's transportation, it's in their purview. It's in House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. As far as I know, it's not been given the light of day. It's about to go into effect in 2026, and it's going to crush car dealers and truck dealers. And what is it going to do? It's going to crush our local economy, the people who work there. It's going to make people go where? Out of state, say to New Hampshire, and what are they going to do? They're going to buy their vapes if we get rid of that stuff. They're going to buy their cars. They're going to buy their trucks. They're going to get their heating fuel. They're going to get their gas. It's really so dangerous to our economy and to our local businesses.
Further gutting the state and turning it even more into a leisure town bedroom community where there's literally nothing but ski areas and condos.
Right,
and second
like the
homes.
tourist industry.
It's ridiculous.
It's really ridiculous.
Where we can all pretend like, oh, we're saving the planet here in Vermont. Look at this perfect green place with no anything. It's all just perfect.
And that we could get into like all the sort of conserved land versus like looking at the working land aspect that's going on too.
That's another piece to it too, where they really do want to make it so that the state is just like this untouchable land where you can't do anything to it. Meanwhile, people suffer because of that. You know?
Well, and what I've seen happen in other places where they've done this, like up in Canada, where they've gotten the people off the land, then they just come in and mine the heck out of it.
The resources.
They know which resource to take in which order. They've mapped. You can go to our government offices and see the maps they have of your property.
You know, that's
and how valuable each layer of it is.
So dangerous.
And they literally just cut the mountains down.
That's really interesting.
So I keep trying to tell people, like, us living in the rural areas protects the rural area, protects the forest.
We're the stewards.
Telling us we can't live in forests. Humans have always lived in forests.
The
I mean,
exactly.
It's crazy.
So
and I
it's
just want to
backwards.
circle that back to Representative Higley because he has so many good bills because he just sees this perspective. He was on the Legislative Council for Administrative Rules when they adopted the advanced clean car out of California, and he voted no, of course. And then he immediately put a bill in, and he was like, nope, we've got to revoke this.
Yeah.
We've got to turn this around because he always sees and understands what the impact is going to be. And I just also want to mention like how unrealistic this is. So in Massachusetts and New York, the legislature carved out the municipalities, so they don't have to buy these electric cars. But the other companies would be forced to buy these electric cars unless they go out of state.
So is this happening here too?
So Vermont hasn't enacted it yet. It's going to be 2026. So unless we revoke this, we repeal it, we have to take action right now. But we're getting so close to the cliff. And the question is, if we don't do something about it in this legislative session, it's going to go into play.
Wow.
And so that's where it's like we shouldn't have to be on this push. And I've been so distraught to see that where it sits right now in House Energy and Digital Infrastructure, they're not having this conversation of, oh, we really should turn this around. And that's where then Chair Walker allowed that to happen. We don't have the charging infrastructure. These trucks, like semi trucks, cost $560,000. You can buy 3 diesel trucks for the cost of one of these electric vehicles.
No one can afford that.
And people don't realize that the diesel trucks now, they're like clean diesel, they're using 60% less diesel than they used to in 2004. So they've come such a long way. they've made a really big difference. They also weigh a lot more, and then you have to look at all the mining and the elements, that are
And the
used
danger
in there.
when you crash and all this, the battery.
A propane truck, Matt Cota, when they were doing their presentation in House Transportation, it's against fire safety rules. They can't even have a propane truck be an electric vehicle. So they cost
Seems a little dangerous.
And I just have to say one other thing. This blew my mind. If you were to take one of these electric trucks and drive it from Burlington to Newport, they only charge for 2 hours. You would need to stop at a charging station that doesn't exist and charge for 5 to 8 hours in order to make that trip.
Wow.
So you don't have the range, you don't have the charging infrastructure, people don't want them, and then the state will say, well, we're not making people buy them, but you're making them be on the lot. They can't sell a diesel truck unless they sell a certain amount of EVs.
Oh.
And then the other part of it is, then if they do that, if they have to sell a diesel truck, they have to either pay a non-compliance fee, they have to pay a fee, or they have to buy clean car credits from Elon Musk.
Yes, so Elon wins either way.
It's the most insane thing in
Yeah.
the world. This is literally playing out in Vermont right now, and it's why we have to change it. And I don't think enough people know about it.
Right, you would think they
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's like trying to get it out there and trying to make sure that people have a push for pick up. It's H65 is the name of the bill that would repeal this so that this does not happen to all the car dealers and our truck dealers around. We're not ready for this. We're not there at all. It's again going to crush the economy. And that bill is H65. It's sitting in House Energy and Digital Infrastructure, and they have it in their authority, in their ability to take it up and help Vermont, and they're not doing it. Yeah. Meanwhile, they're working on House Bill 125 to look at all the charging infrastructure and get all this data, which already exists.
The deserts, what are they calling it?
Charging deserts.
Yeah. Yeah. So isn't it Rob Roper who pointed out these maps already exist, but it's not a state website or something?
It was on the AAA app.
That's
it's
what
like
it was.
this information is already there.
So he said
our corporate partners.
Didn't he
I know.
He asked the chair, or he asked
He
somebody.
asked the entire committee.
Why not just use the AAA version? And
Does this get you
what did they
anywhere?
say?
Yeah.
What did they say?
I think it was like, oh, well, that's not as accurate as we want it to be, or not as granular. They always talk about how much granular
They love
data.
the data, the granular data.
And granted, data is helpful,
God.
but how much data
goodness.
do you need? How much data can you pay for? How much is it going to cost the agency to do that? So they're spending their time on that, and they're also kind of sort of wussing around the H289, which is the governor's bill. Basically, Patty McCoy, Jim Harrison introduced that. That's the one that would fix a lot of this bad energy climate policy that came from the supermajority. It would totally clean up so much of it, and they're kind of getting a little bit of testimony, but I don't think that there's not time for them to move it. And in the meantime, we're all struggling because we're about to get sued, right? The Global Warming Solutions Act, we're getting sued by Conservation Law Foundation because we're not meeting these dates. And so the littlest thing, that was one of the things I said to the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. I said, just change the date. If you are not willing to repeal the Global Warming Solutions Act, to amend it from requirements to goals, to make the Climate Council advisory, at least change the date.
Yeah.
Because they're letting us get sued. I mean, it's actual...
Well,
incredibly irresponsible
set
for
us
them to
up.
let that happen. And one last thing I just want to say on this. I didn't finish the Bill Smith quote. At the end of the House Transportation Committee, when they were taking testimony, and I think everybody in that committee was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea Massachusetts and New York are going through that. Why would Vermont want to do that? There were two women on there, maybe Molly Smith and Rep. White, and they were talking about this ideal world of climate and environmental policy. And yes, in this ideal world, we could do something, but we live in the real world, and we have to watch out for these businesses and these people in this company. And Bill Smith specifically said, in the Global Warming Solutions Act that passed in September 2020, he said, right in there, you can find it in law, the Climate Council needs to make sure that anything that they recommend, which is really sort of highly looked at as being adopted, like the legislature really has to consider what comes out of the Climate Council. It has to be cost effective, technically feasible, and equitable. The clean heat standard was none of those things. The advanced clean car piece was none of those things. The cap and invest that Rob Roper's been writing about is absolutely not falling into that realm. No. So what are they doing? And that's where it's like they have the authority to fix it. They absolutely need to fix it, and it's so frustrating for those of us who do pay close attention to say, why are you not taking this up? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
So frustrating.
Thank you for paying such close
Yes.
attention.
Oh my gosh,
Allison,
you
really.
want like other Vermonters to know so
right.
they can reach out and just say, guys, don't do this to us. Think about how that's going to crush, the car dealers and the trucking and increase the cost of all services and products for all of us. I mean, it's a nightmare, and we all see it.
That's the death by 1,000 cuts piece that
Yeah.
you hear from folks, and one of them being John Rogers, who said that last year.
Yes.
There's so many different ways in which they tax us or hurt us, and to the point where you don't even know where it's coming from. I mean, how many people out there aren't even aware that on their energy bill there's an Efficiency Vermont charge?
Right.
So many people that they're not even aware that they pay. I mean, they say it's about energy efficiency, right?
Right.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, what's the energy efficiency for? Well, is it about conserving energy, or is it about reducing carbon? I mean, so like to come to that, to bring that back to the S65 conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like they're trying to. This Global Warming Solutions Act repeal is not a repeal. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news or the guy who's saying what nobody wants to hear.
Right.
But the reality is, the truth hurts. And there's a reason why truth and hurt are spelled with the same letters. I love saying that.
Interesting.
I
I never saw that. That's good.
But it's true. It's true. It's they're not. The only thing that's really happening with this repeal is a delay of the fuel dealers registry for another 2 years, I think, till 26, which that's good. But I think a repeal would mean removing it, right? Or at least getting rid of the program entirely. And what they're trying to do with this program is through your Efficiency Vermont charge, I think it's an EEU charge is what it's referred to.
Yeah,
it's
EEC from the EEC.
Or EEC, okay. So
yeah.
it's basically an energy efficiency charge where they're taking a percentage of what you pay in your rate, your electric rate, and they're giving it to this organization. Actually, I believe it's VEIC who takes the money.
VEIC is their parent
Their parent nonprofit.
Exactly.
And then that's how Efficiency Vermont is funded, which they're in the business of weatherization, electricity efficiency. But what they want to do with this S65 is make it so that it would not just be for energy efficiency, it would also be for carbon reduction. So using the money from your charge on your ratepayer, as a ratepayer, to fund projects like electric heat pumps. Going into, they're just trying to do the clean heat standard, but a different way. It's the same exact thing. I'm just going to say that very simply, right?
Yes.
Just so people that are trying to, because they're calling it a repeal.
No.
It's no repeal, and the reason why they haven't voted on it yet, I want to come back to this. One of the reasons they didn't vote on the floor in the Senate is because Senator Vyhovsky was in Europe, standing in solidarity with the Ukrainians. I love the pictures of her like this. I hope she watches, because I actually do love the pictures of her like this. I think they're awesome, and I think they're hilarious. Yeah, they're good. They're good. They're funny, and they're.
But she cut out from the session.
But she left in the middle of the session when Vermonters are waiting desperately for relief to know that this carbon tax isn't coming. But the reality is that it's not. She was gone, and they didn't vote on the bill, right?
Right.
And then she's back. And then they didn't vote on it yesterday, even
And
though they were scheduled to.
I don't think they have enough votes.
They don't have enough votes. And it's
Right.
not because of the repeal part of the bill. It's this efficiency charge.
Yes.
It's this energy efficiency component where all the utilities have come along and said, hey, this isn't a good idea, and here's why. I sat through testimony in both the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Energy and in, I think it was Finance.
Senate Finance.
The Senate Finance one was like 6 hours of testimony.
No.
Even Green Mountain Power doesn't want to do it.
Wow.
And I have to say, I talked to a man who's been at the PUC for 30 years, and he was like, I have never seen this happen before, where the regulators don't want it, the administration doesn't want it, and the utilities don't want it, yet it was moving through.
Yeah, I was blown away by that.
It was crazy.
So who has the authority in our government? I think we're really at a crossroads with this. And there's those of us who are saying, wait, I suddenly have renewed hope in this democratic process and this republic that we live in. This is what it's all about, treat each other equal if we really get back to the values. But then there are these decisions coming from these.
Well, I would say to that, and this, Paul, is something you and I have talked about. So I'll start with last year at the end of the session. Paul and I were standing outside with a representative. He didn't want to be named, so I won't say his name. I'll respect that. But he said, we make a lot of bad policy, and then we can fix it. And I was so
I've heard that too.
They say that a
upset.
lot.
They say that a lot.
I was so
but I don't see
upset.
a lot of fixing.
But I think the
messier and messier and
But
messier.
the problem, I just want to continue on that really quickly, is there's so often not thought given to what did they just do and who does it impact.
Yeah.
And this was brought out in Senate Finance when we were there listening to this S65, because they're like, oh, well, we
That's
could always
right.
fix it. We could do this. We could always fix it. And Ed McNamara, the chair of the PUC, is sitting there going, why are we even going to go down this bad policy road? He's like literally warning them, gave them all the reasons why this wasn't a good idea. Why are we going to go down that road? And then you've got some of the senators going, well, it sort of happens. And it's like, but the people who get impacted, like, that's not good policy.
That's been their
That's
MO.
mind-blowing.
It's been their MO for a long time.
We can fix it.
Oh, well, when we go down this road, and I think it was actually Thomas Chidnin who was questioning.
It was.
And him saying, like,
It was.
hey, he's usually a fairly reasonable Democrat, but, and that's just another example of the things that are said in committee where, one of my best videos last year that I made during the election season was a compilation of all the craziest things that the legislators say in committee.
Yeah.
And that would be one I would add to it, where it's
Right.
like, oh yeah, let's just try out this really expensive
Right.
idea that maybe will work, but if it doesn't, well, we're just going to continue to go through with it anyway,
Right.
right? And then
It
if it
takes
doesn't, we can
time.
fix it. We'll just
Right.
why? Who wants this?
Exactly.
Who
Right.
do you really
Well,
want this?
Well, that's where we got things that make you go,
Exactly.
Right? Where is all this
Exactly.
and it's the top down, I
Right.
think, is
It
what
is
we're
the
really
top down.
questioning. Is where
And
is the
slow
stuff-
it down. You have to slow it down.
Yes.
Like, they put S65 back to Senate Natural Resources. Like, you got some work to do here.
I'm glad that they did
You
that.
got some people to listen to. But it's like that, unfortunately, has been a pattern where these things get pushed through. And we know we're all human. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. We get that part of it. But you don't take these type of chances and risks with people's lives, with people's livelihoods, with people's money, taxpayers' money. Like, why would we do that?
And that's what it comes back to also is like, I understand wanting to do something to help solve what you perceive to be the bigger problem. I think they're going to continue to learn through the work that we're doing that what they think the issue is when it comes to climate change, just to say on that note for a second,
Right.
is not
Right.
what's causing climate change.
Right.
And for years, we've been, had this idea pounded into our head that carbon is bad, and that
Right.
carbon is bad for life on Earth, which,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned,
And
carbon,
that you're smart if you believe that.
yeah, and
Right.
if
You're
you're
the intelligent
You're the educated
folks.
you're
Right.
the right one. You're on the side of science.
Right.
And that's a
I
hard
think
thing to
they're-
let go of.
It
It
is.
is a very hard thing to
I
let
know.
go of, and it's
I've been there, done that.
I've
Right.
been there, done that too.
Right.
It's
No.
it's an identifying factor, I think, for a lot of them actually, as environmentalists or somebody who loves the planet.
Right.
We all love the planet. I don't blame them for that. Like, I
Right.
get where they're coming from.
Right.
But I hope that over time they'll be open-minded and open-hearted enough, ultimately, because that is what it comes down to, right?
Right.
Yes.
Is
To our
our
fellow
love
Americans.
to one another
Right.
as fellow citizens of this great state. I hope that they'll start to come around and see, like, oh, wow, there's some emerging science that's actually saying some different things, and maybe we should take that seriously. But that kind of does come back to where is this all coming from, and ultimately, like, it's a special interest thing, it's an industries thing, and that's why I think, to be really honest, having you two here with me today, I love, because visually, right? Here are two ladies who are, somebody might see you on the street and they'd say, "Oh, those ladies are." I'll be honest with you guys,
like,
they
"Oh,
profile,
grandma over
they
here."
profile you, and I would profile you and be like, "Oh, they believe in climate change."
Crunchy.
Or like, I don't know.
Right. I know, hippie.
They're totally
hippie. Yeah, I always-
vaxxers. They're totally vaxxers. They're not anti-vaxxers. They're vaxxers. No, but you'd get profiled maybe, right? And I think that's why Mary Holland is so it's inspiring and exciting to me, is because I do think that there's a real opposition to, like, what people for so long, the Democratic Party or the left has been considered the party of peace and love
Right.
and environmentalism and like open-mindedness and all these different
Right.
things. But I think, Bernie, and Bernie's supposed to be emblematic of all that. But I think we're starting to learn and realize more and more that just isn't the reality. And
Right.
RFK Jr. really is the Big Pharma. Bernie Sanders has been playing this part all this time, and people are starting to.
Where is your money coming from?
The spell is starting to wear off,
Right,
you know, and
Yes.
so I think that it's a big deal to bring it back to having her come in here into Vermont. And with that, I do want to show this clip. Or is that
Can
okay?
I say one last thing about Mary?
Of course.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that folks know that we're going to have a celebration.
Oh,
So it's
yes.
not all work and no play.
Right,
because,
good. Right.
So in the evening, if folks want to register, this is a private event. If you register, we're going to have a nice party in the evening from 6 to 9. We're going to have a band. Dr. Susie Harris is going to be playing with some other folks, some jazz, some nice music, and Mary's going to speak, and we're going to have nice food, and it's going to be really relaxing, a cash bar. But if you drink soft drinks, those are on, part of the coming to it. And it's a fundraiser for Children's Health Defense New England and Vermont Stands Up. And to kind of recoup, so, this is costing us some,
Is that going to be in the State House?
No, it's going to be in Montpelier.
Where in Montpelier?
It's like if you
Okay,
register,
got it.
and you'll know. We're going to make sure you know.
I'll be there.
You'll
Right,
be there.
right.
Where is it?
Bells out.
I want to go.
Well,
A
and
secret
it's sad
party?
that we have to feel that way. You know what I mean?
know.
But we do want to make sure everybody just feels, safe. And also, we're trying to bring some life back into Montpelier.
Yeah.
The businesses there are suffering. COVID killed Montpelier.
Small businesses.
Nobody comes to work anymore in the state offices. So any restaurant that was hoping to make a living, they're not.
No, it's
so
tough.
We're
And
trying
then
to show them that being part of this movement is healthy, it's fun,
Yeah.
we know how to party, we
Yeah.
know how to have a good time, and we're just going to celebrate Mary and all of you guys who've gotten us this far
Right.
on
So-
this journey.
And I would also just add, before you throw in anything there, I think that so often because of media history, there's so much othering that goes on and so much division with, even like Republican and Democrat or vax
Sure.
and anti-vax and,
I know.
all of that sort of stuff. And that's where I just feel like if we can all come together and say, we do respect each other and we want to make sure that people have choices because every single one of us is different. And I think that that's one of the things that we're coming in from is that we want to make sure people have choices. We want to make sure that their choices are honored and respected and that this stuff isn't forced on people. And we don't do the sort of othering thing or like my team, your team sort of thing.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not, you keep me grounded in that sense. I'm just making a point where we
yeah.
do that, right?
And I did it too because I'm like the super majority. I'm
do
doing
it all
it
the time.
too.
I do it all the time. And be very clear. I think we are all three of us at least, we're all on the same team, which is Team Human. And
Yes.
that is what it comes down
love
to.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And if you're somebody, it's very easy for us to tell you who our enemy is, right? Anybody that's anti-human.
Right.
That's pretty simple.
Right.
So.
Good point.
But no, and Amy, I just want to make sure that we've covered everything that you want to talk about because I think it's such and actually I do have a question. Maureen Heck, she writes, where can we find out about this event? How do we register?
Yes.
And my guess is
VermontStandsUp.org.
VermontStandsUp.org.
Yep,
Okay.
you'll see there's a whole page there for the Mary Holland event.
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
definitely.
And I do have a comment here from Dean Powers. He says, "Hi, ladies. Music and food. The new Irish Catholic Church." That's kind of funny, but. And beyond,
I am Irish.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we're taking the high road.
I'm Irish. Are you guys Irish?
Irish, Scottish.
I have a little bit.
My grandmother fell in love with an Irish boy, but he wasn't Jewish, so she couldn't marry him.
wow.
So I feel kind of Irish.
That's pretty funny.
Right.
That's really funny. Beyond Skeptical writes, "Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Amy. Great discussion. So encouraging knowing other Vermonters see what's happening in our state government." And hold on to that thought because we're not quite done yet. Alison and I are going to continue this conversation. We have some things that we want to talk about that have been happening in the Vermont State House. We also want to kind of tie this whole conversation together.
Right.
So with that, thank you very much, Amy.
No, thank you,
Appreciate it.
Amy.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Alison. You're the best,
and congratulations.
You're welcome.
I
Anytime.
know. Thank you. It's good.
Some of you, just staying on the note of health, of the Children's Health Defense Coalition, some of you may be aware of that organization because of a controversial interaction between Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who happens to be part of the focus of today's conversation, and Robert Kennedy Jr. during his confirmation hearings in the U.S. Senate. Bernie had some choice criticisms, if you will, of RFK and a product that was being sold on the Children's Health Defense Coalition.org. So I'm just going to show this to you all. You probably already, maybe you've seen it, but if not, stick around, check this out. It's really funny. But we're having the president of this organization come to Vermont State House. So
Right.
let's
And T-shirts will be available at the evening
T-shirts
event.
will be
Onesies
available.
T-shirts.
Onesies,
Yes.
T-shirts. I want one. So I'm going to show this clip here.
You have started a group called the Children's Health Defense. You're the originator. Right now, as I understand it, on their website, they are selling what's called onesies. These are little things, clothing for babies. One of them is titled Unfaxed, Unafraid. Next one, and they're sold for $26 a piece, by the way. Next one is No Vax, No Problem. They're coming before this committee and you say you're pro-vaccine. Just want to ask some questions. And yet your organization is making money selling a child's product to parents for $26, which casts fundamental doubt on the usefulness of vaccines. Can you tell us now that you will, now that you are pro-vaccine, that you're going to have your organization take these products off the market?
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
Yeah, that was just a few months ago. You founded that. You certainly have power. You can make that call. Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with
Are you
leadership.
supportive of these onesies?
Bernie's
Supporting the
face.
vaccines.
Are you supportive of this clothing, which is militantly anti-vaccine?
I am supportive of vaccines. I will. I want good science, and I want to protect.
But you will not
vaccines.
tell the organization you founded not to continue.
With that, I'll bring it back to the studio here. I think it was one of the most hilarious interactions I've ever seen from Bernie Sanders. Just pure, people say he's become a caricature of himself, and that's a perfect example of that's just like a snippet right there. Do you support these onesies? And he's just losing it over and his eyes are bulging out. It's
So angry.
It's really quite unbelievable.
Yes.
I just keep rolling with it.
Yeah. No, it's just so sad, and it's so much misinformation. I mean, he definitely does not have the information to be making those comments. He's not even letting him speak during that clip to talk about the fact that there is so much science lacking in vaccine science. There's so much lacking. And this is where I would say that one of the bills that came into Health and Human Services is a bill that would track vaccine adverse events in Vermont, because there are a tremendous number of vaccine adverse events and they don't get talked about, so people don't often have true informed consent when they're making decisions about their benefit risk analysis on vaccines. And I will say that there's been $5.2 billion that have been paid out to people who have been injured with vaccines, which is devastating and heartbreaking. So I think what RFK is really trying to do is let people know that vaccine injury is real, and we need to be aware of it, and we need to make sure that people are informed so these decisions can be respected. They're not taking up that bill in Health Human Services right now, but they did allow Representative Higley to introduce it. And one last thought on that blew my mind is the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986 was when President Reagan signed off and basically gave full immunity, full protection to Big Pharma in making these products. So if you have an injury from a vaccine, Big Pharma is not responsible for any damages, and that has resulted in a dramatic drop in safety testing. There's not a lot of good safety testing that goes on with vaccines, and it's so important for people to realize that. That's where RFK is coming strong. That's some of the stuff that Mary Holland is going to be talking about with the event on April 10th. And we really hope people can come, because our biggest thing is you make your own choices about vaccines, whether you want them or you don't want them, but at least you get informed, good information so that you can make that good decision. And that's the only thing that we're pushing for. Otherwise, it's you make your choice, see how you're best protected. Yeah.
So, and with that, I just want to say quickly, there may be a little bit of background noise with some work that's being done here in the studio. We are going to talk for a few more minutes here, but we're going to start to wind this down.
Yep.
But there are some pretty important topics and things I know we want to discuss. But I think staying on that note of the whole Bernie Sanders thing, talking about going around and fighting oligarchy, right? You have this gentleman who's supposed to be a senator from Vermont, and he is, right? But what we're seeing from him is all this time being spent elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
You're not seeing him in D.C. or in Vermont. You're seeing him like in Nebraska and in Colorado, where he's hosting these massive rallies, and
Right.
and all these people are there fighting against what he calls oligarchy. And you and I have talked a little bit about this, and we've said, well, the reason why it's resonating with so many people is because what he's talking about, some of it is true.
Right.
But the reality is Bernie's not going to do anything about it. And anybody at this point who's still being fooled by Bernie Sanders, you know, you're probably just young. You haven't been old enough to get tricked by him, right?
And honestly, oligarchy has always been true. I mean, you can go back to ancient history and you can always see that there are predators and there's people who want profit and there's people who want power, and they will do whatever it takes. That has always been the story. And I think the most important piece is, you know, is Bernie on a presidential tour? You know,
Yeah.
of course he's sort of sending this message and people are sort of jumping on board because they want to be involved in it and they understand it and they see it. But the question is, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
And that's what we're back at, like, what is that action? And there's a lot of action here in Vermont that people can take. You know?
Yeah. So, and you were talking about this earlier. If people maybe would take that energy and their rage and frustration, and maybe instead of turning it on, you know, somebody's Tesla parked at
Right.
a ski lot or whatever,
Right.
you know, maybe like go engage with the State House and see what some of these bills are doing to
Right.
you know, take your money away from you and make you poor.
Right.
And you know, that kind of comes back to this whole idea of like bad policy making, right? One of the, and I really want to talk about this because I think it does play into the mentality, just to give you an insight into the type of people in the State House. I want to show this clip as well. We have Teddy Wasasak in the House Ways and Means Committee talking about picking winners and losers. And he's a representative of Berry City. We're actually in Berry City right now, which is where our studio is. And I just think it's important to point this out. We want to show this just simply to give you an idea of where Teddy's coming from and where this whole push to fight authoritarianism and oligarchy,
Right.
where it's coming from.
Right.
And I believe it's Bernie Sanders ultimately. But let's just show this, like 30 seconds.
Perfect.
No, sorry, I feel very strongly about this. I feel the need to say this. The market picks winners and losers. It is the job of the government and tax code to right size that. So yes, we are picking winners and losers because the market is already starting that dynamic for us, and it's our job to make sure the right people are winning.
I think that there's a place for government in, you know, playing referee and mitigating factors that are in the market. I don't think that it's appropriate to be picking winners and losers, targeting specific classes of payers based off of likes and dislikes. I think that's a dangerous and slippery slope.
So that was in the House Ways and Means Committee. I think it was last week on Thursday. You know, and so after further research, right, you start hearing of this whole situation starts to like pop off online a little bit. You know, I start kind of diving into it a little bit more, and it turns out Fox News picks it up.
That's awesome.
Which is so just like, oh, of course they did. They must have seen it maybe from one of my clips on X. They didn't give me credit, unfortunately, but they don't have to because it's a public video.
Right,
It's fine.
right.
But they said Vermont lawmaker defends call for picking winners and losers as indictment of rigged economy towards rich. And with that, I wrote over the top of it, screenshot, congratulations, Teddy Wasasak, you made it on Fox. Right. And to be honest with you, I kind of really am congratulating him because to him, this is it's like he doesn't care. And he wrote, thanks, Paul, it's a high honor. Let's tax the rich and make winners out of working people rather than billionaires like Elon and Trump. Right? So I just wanted to bring that up because it comes back to the bigger, broader conversation, right? Like, here's one of our legislators from Berry City, of all places.
Right. Here we are.
Telling us, hey,
Right.
let's build a Marxist communist society. What do you guys think of that, huh?
So dangerous. I mean, just for him to even think that it's his job to pick winners and losers. And in a free market, in a true free market, the people get to pick the products and the services that work for them. That's the beauty of a true free market. I mean,
So talk to me about that, though. if he's, specifically what he's talking about is building a tax code structure where there's 9 different designations where, that's your rate based on how much, you make, what your house is worth, how much
Right.
time you spend there, if it's your second home or not.
Right.
And there's some questions that I agree. Maybe we should have a different tax rate for somebody who owns their 3rd home as opposed to.
Yeah, but that's totally different for a tax rate compared to picking winners and losers.
Yes.
And I think that's what needs to be separated out. And this is where I also struggle with Bernie so heavily because of, what was the name of his book? It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. And I think what we need to recognize is, what is capitalism?
Yeah.
Capitalism, like, look at Main Street, Barrie City Town here. All of these small businesses, that's capitalism.
That's right.
I think what he's getting confused on is corporatism. And when there's favors for corporations and tax breaks for corporations, and when corporations are, giving money to governments and have way too much control, and you start to get into the realm of fascism. And so that needs to be separated out, because capitalism is obviously what America is built on, and what our small businesses and all the services that we offer, that needs to happen. That's a healthy economy. And that's not separated out. And that's where Bernie, I'm so frustrated every time I hear him talk about the capitalism part of it.
I agree, and to be fair, where they come from a lot of with their whole talk about capitalism, right? And I'll just show this. This is on X as well. It kind of builds on that conversation I was having with Teddy, or the back and forth, whatever you want to call it. I said a counter argument to myself, which is basically, capitalism, as far as people like Teddy are concerned, is it's exploitive by nature. It literally tries to exploit people, exploit land, child labor. In third world countries, a lot of these businesses that we have in the United States, like shown here in this graph, like Apple and Amazon and Microsoft, these companies rely on
child labor,
lackadaisical environmental regulations or none, child labor,
Right.
and tons of ethical concerns that very valid to say that. But that kind of brings me back to that point of, like, yeah, you know what? Capitalism, it can be used for bad, but if we were doing all this work here in America, bringing jobs and manufacturing and like everything, I see what the Trump administration is doing. I'm seeing a lot of businesses come back. So these are good things, what I'm seeing from them right now.
I think that's where you could also go to, like, NAFTA, and when they were allowed to sort of, go down to, say, Mexico and pay people nothing and take advantage of, like you said, all the resources, the people, et cetera. Like, none of us support that. I don't think there's anybody that would support that. And then you look at what's happening in South America and Africa with all the mining. And this is where I think there's so many people who really struggle, including myself, with the electric vehicle movement.
Yeah.
If you've got literally 4,000 to 5,000 pounds of a battery in a semi, in a big tractor trailer, how much child labor went into that? How much ecological devastation went in to create that battery? And then you've got, like, The Guardian had done an article where it was Tesla, Microsoft, Google. There were a bunch of companies that were getting sued because these children in Africa were dying because of the mining part of it. And that's, I'm sure, what everyone is against, but that's very different than, these small businesses, coming and offering services and products in your community that people want and have access to. And that brings me also, if you don't mind, Paul, you and I talked a little bit about this, but artificial markets. So many times the legislature is trying to create these artificial markets, on electric vehicles, on, say, the heat pumps, et cetera. And if people don't want them, if they're not good enough, if they don't work, if they don't make sense in their house, they're not going to buy them. And this brings me back to last session when Senator Becca White sort of went in front of the State House and she tried to call out Phil Scott. And she made a fool out of herself because she said, basically, we're not making anybody buy anything. You're not making anybody buy anything, but you're hurting the manufacturers by making them pay for the fact that people may not want this. It's the same thing with the cars.
You are making people buy something because you're making it less. Yeah, you're punishing what you don't want.
Right.
I hear them say that too a lot. Like, you punish what you don't want and you incentivize what you do.
The carrot or the stick.
Yeah, they love those phrases. They love those little phrases. And those are the type of phrases that they use. It's almost like their little insider baseball game that they play there, that just like the public, if they understood it, man, would they be mad. They would not like it.
And it's kind of also like a power thing of, like, are we going to do this the nice way, or are we going to, kind of use the stick a little bit here? But you can't do that when there is a product or a situation where it's just not aligning. It doesn't make sense for someone to buy something or use something because their house still needs to be weatherized, but then these little fuel dealers or these car dealers are going to take the hit and they've got to pay for it.
Doesn't make
and I
any
think
sense.
if people understood that a car dealer, if they can't sell enough electric vehicles in order to sell the internal combustion engines that people may need and want for their job, their work, whatever it might be, are they going to really have to buy credits from Elon Musk? Like, how would Vermonters feel about, oh, you have to buy your clean car credits from Elon Musk in order to sell the cars that people actually want because that's what they need for their job or their work?
They're gonna hate
I mean,
it.
it's the most twisted artificial market ever. Like, they need to keep their hands out of
do.
it and respect the fact that people know what they need, and that's the part of the free market where it's going to push, and it, that's where creativity and innovation comes
Yes.
in, and we
Yes.
see that, and let that happen.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing when you let innovation. Humans do what
their
they do.
thing,
Yeah.
exactly.
Humans are creative by nature,
We are,
not destructive.
and we want to solve problems.
They are problem solving by nature,
Right.
not problem creating, in my opinion. I mean, I do believe we have a fallen nature as described by the Bible and so
Yeah.
many different religions, right? Where it is our nature to do things that are against our own best interests, even
Right.
when they don't make sense.
Right.
But I believe that's really the story of what you see here in the State House. It's just a lot of people who really believe in their own ability to make things happen the way that they believe they should be. But I do believe our government and structure was set up with the knowledge that a higher power does exist.
Oh, yeah.
And that they are that higher power is the one really that's meant to pick winners and losers.
Right.
And if that's even how you want to frame the world, the
I
fact that
know.
you're even framing the world like that is interesting. Like, what do you
Right.
think about yourself, Teddy? Where do you fit into that? I'd be
that's
curious to
also,
know. What
like-
do you think you are? Are you a winner or are you a loser?
Right, and it's
Like-
also sort of that savior mentality. You're not in there to save us. Like,
you're
that's
not.
not your job.
No, you're not there to
Your
save
job
us.
is to be in there to protect the people, to uphold the law. You take an oath not to do anything injurious to the Constitution, to the people, and that's
Yeah.
the piece where there is such a, I'm going to save the world, I'm going to solve all the problems.
Yeah.
It's not your job, it's not possible. Just sort of, keep supporting the people, keep supporting Vermont so we can do it.
I think that's where the ideology of Marxism comes from in the first place, though, is truly a lack of faith and a lack of trust, and really the fellow human being to make decisions for themselves. They feel like, if we don't legislate this problem or regulate this thing or make this a certain way, then we're going to have worse problems in the
Right.
long run because of it.
Right.
And it really is the folly of man, ultimately. And I think that Marxism is so much more. It's a spiritual problem. There's so many. It's a lack of faith. It's a fear thing. And to really get into the psychology and mentality of somebody who thinks like that, like what have they experienced in their lives where they feel like this is the only way? I think a lot of those people do come from tough backgrounds where maybe they were dependent on SNAP benefits or
Right,
one of
right.
these programs that feeds you when you're a child when you have crappy parents. And I don't know about Teddy's situation. I have literally no
Right,
idea. I'm just
right.
saying, in general, where does this come from?
And we
You know?
talked about this, I remember last year when we spoke about, a society, a state having a strong social safety net to take care of those who run into situations or need help and support. We absolutely need that. But then when you start to look at the state as the answer to everything, I mean,
Yeah.
that's where I would go back to Thomas Sowell with the constrained and the unconstrained view. And we recognize we do not live in a perfect world. It's not ideal. It's not utopia. We're never going to reach a perfect world, but we're going to keep trying to support people versus communism is more of this idealistic utopia, which, is that real? Is that ever going to exist?
No, it won't, because there will always it doesn't the idea of communism doesn't respond very well to the constructs, I believe, of nature, and that includes human nature.
Flawed.
I believe it's
human nature, right.
it's human nature is flawed,
Right.
and this idea that you could have this mechanistic, and they're pushing it with technocracy now further, right? You could have this mechanized, technocratic, autonomous government
Right.
where decisions are made for you.
Right.
That doesn't really jive well with nature. I think that you're going to see nature continue to fight back in ways that we are seeing it currently.
Oh, yeah.
Here's a really great point needs to be made. Share Blue for You writes, question, why is fighting oligarchy a priority now? The DNC has enjoyed vast more support from the millionaire/billionaire class.
Yeah.
Or do we only want the oligarchs that are on our side?
Good point.
Such an amazing point. And
Huge.
even as a criticism to the right wing right now, and I'm not going to mince my words by saying this, I've been very critical of Elon Musk. I like a lot of the stuff that he's doing, but I'm worried about the dependency on some of the systems that he's creating for us. And I do think it's really interesting where if you did have somebody on the left that was pushing for a lot of the stuff that Elon Musk is pushing for,
Oh, yeah.
all of the people on the right wing would be freaking out, myself included. You know, like I don't know, like the whole transhumanism thing as a whole, right? Like the whole Neuralink and how I saw him make a tweet earlier today that it's almost like humans are nothing but the biological bootleg for super intelligence. And it's like, actually, no, humanity's divine.
Right,
It
we
was created
are.
by God.
And we have to hold on to that.
Like-
we're trying to hold on to that.
Yeah, we are
know.
going to hold on to that.
Exactly. But as that sort of tech evolves, and I think that's what we see happening, is just like bringing in the AI, bringing in the blockchain ledgers. And I would say one of my things, we saw this with COVID, right? Problem, reaction, solution,
sure.
right? There's a bit of a problem. Obviously, there's something going on. Reaction is oftentimes guided by the media. Oh, look, we could do this. So in COVID, it was like, oh, the vaccine's the answer. There's our solution. Boom. You know, despite all the risks, despite all the lack of information,
Absolutely.
even though there were doctors working all over the world together to come up with a solution and a protocol to help what was going on with the real problem. And right now, we're seeing, okay, is this playing out again right now? There is a problem with fraud and where's money going and all, like that's a real problem.
Sure.
Bureaucracy, bloated bureaucracy, etc. And then what's the reaction and solution going to be? Is it going to be put everything on a blockchain ledger? Last time humans were put on a ledger, it was slavery. That was when we had it. And I think that's something we need. Are we going to be in this sort of technocratic slavery piece? And some people love, you know, tech and they embrace it, but how is that going to be utilized? Should that be utilized? To what extent should it be utilized in the government?
And it should be a choice.
Right.
It should be a personal choice. You
Right.
shouldn't have to do it.
Right.
Right. And I
To
think
access services or to interact with your government, exactly.
Yeah. Or pay a parking fee.
Right.
Like, and that's already a thing.
Right.
I mean, you have to be institutionalized and part of the system.
Well, are they going to get rid of checks?
That's what. Who knows?
I work with so many elders, and that would be so
Well,
difficult.
Those are the folks that are suffering the most, I think, with everything that's happening right now.
Right.
And the reality is like that whole Y2K thing that happened back in the day.
Right.
While the world never actually ended, I do believe at that moment, a lot of people, basically older folks, just like checked out.
Oh,
like
yeah.
they stopped caring about stuff and they didn't participate.
They don't want to be
because it's
online. Right.
too like this is getting weird.
Well, that brings me to sorry, were you just
No,
going to say
it's
something
just
else there?
like this generation is like we're so used to all of this. I feel so thankful that I grew up here in Vermont and I have grandparents and people around me that are much older that have given me a real insight as to what life was like before everything was digital. I mean, I
Right.
think about the work that I do for Guy Page, right? Can you even imagine writing? I can't even, honestly, I don't know how they did it. How did you write a news story back in the day and then publish it the next day?
Right.
Right? Like to go, and not even, like to go from whatever happened, did you write down the quote?
Right.
You literally wrote it
You
down?
couldn't go back and listen to it.
You couldn't listen to it? You didn't write what they
Exactly.
said down?
I know.
How did
That's
you write
where
it down?
tech has so much to offer in some regards. It really,
It's
really
incredible.
does.
It's incredible.
But I will say, like in House Healthcare and Senate Healthcare, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, I listened to this 3-hour presentation on AI in healthcare, and it was mind-blowing. Because I've been talking about digital twinning in my Wellness for Life class for probably at least 8 years, like the ethics around digital twinning, like you as a data set. What do you look like? How is that going to be used for insurance? Are people going to bet on you? Are you going to be in the human capital derivatives market? So that's the piece where it was so much information, and it was all sort of a big push on using AI in doctors' offices. And
Yeah.
again, some people will embrace that and they want that, and other people, and I just said to the committee, I said, there's got to be an opt-out.
Yes.
There are absolutely some people who are not going to want to share their information. They want to work with a human. They don't want the privacy invasion. They don't want the AI in there. So just create an opt-out. Whereas
I
other
agree.
people feel like it's going to save my life. It's the best thing ever. You know, and that's where can we create a world where people continue to have those options?
No, I think that's the big thing. It all comes back to choice and
Yeah.
being able to choose how much do you actually want to engage
In that.
right? The Constitution has set out lines for us in which really are good guidelines as and I mean the state's constitution and the federal, but
Oh, yeah.
ultimately I'm talking about the states. like these are the things that you should and can do to engage. Here are some of your rights. Exercise them.
Right.
You know,
and protect them.
That includes you know, engaging on these issues, right?
Right.
You know, you actually don't have to be digitally monitored and tracked if you don't want to be.
Right.
I think that we're increasingly losing the ability to say no to those things. I think ultimately, I mean, I say that out loud. I say that I know it's not necessarily true because you do. It's not that you have to be. It's just that you are.
Right. And I think that's also generational because there's definitely some people that just don't even care.
They don't even
like they
care.
can have whatever they want, no problem.
Part of me feels that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, this does bring up a different point. My girlfriend and I were talking about a couple days ago. We were both like, "Why is our phones so full of storage? I need to delete all this stuff." And to figure out, like, a lot of the stuff that she has is photos, and a lot of stuff I have is photos and videos on a separate app. But it's funny because when you compare, like, all of the stuff that's taking up all the storage on my phone, it's like, that's a pretty good snapshot of what's going on in here, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's a pretty good snapshot of the data that's in my brain.
Right.
For her, she only has so much bandwidth as well. And for her storage capacity on her phones, it's all pictures of her dog and family and all this different stuff.
Right.
But I thought to myself, we started to go down this rabbit hole thinking about this where it's like, holy cow, like all this data and information, you can infer so much about someone's brain.
Oh, yeah.
Based on what's on their phone.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just the storage component. These computers and supercomputers and these data processors, these spaces where they do this, they can infer a lot more than just what your storage is. I mean,
and then you get into the derivatives market and how much is this going to be bet on? Are they going to be betting on, are we the new commodity?
Yes.
Data's a big commodity.
Well,
are we the new commodity?
People are becoming the commodity.
We are.
And I mean, how, make it abundantly obvious, the people right now that are launching these meme coins, right? So if you've gotten into the algorithm and you've found a way, right, and all of a sudden you just blow up, like this most recent one was that guy with the Saratoga water. I think I showed you about it.
Yes.
And he's been at it and in the game for a long time. But like his whole social profile has become a commodity.
Right.
Right. And a lot of these people are, they'll blow up and then they'll launch a coin within a few days, and then they pull the rug, and then they just swipe,
and that's that.
And that's that.
Yeah.
But I think that what that's leading us towards is there's a larger thing to be played there. Is everybody going to be like a stock eventually, where you're buying parts of their brand or who they are, or and I say this as somebody who's engaged in this world, you know, and I feel like a pirate in some senses, where I'm way ahead of it, where it's like. We're doing it and we're playing the game.
Let's see where it's going to go. But it's like
it's the Wild West.
It's
yeah,
totally
and like I kind of like that. I like that I'm in that space because it's my generation's Wild West.
Right.
And there'll be a day where it's regulated.
And how does it come around?
But what is it going to look like? And I think being part of the conversation is, for me, that's the most fun part.
Right.
So I don't know. I do think, though, Alison, it's about 12:40.
Yep.
I need to get to the State House. Are you going to the State House as well?
I've got to go see my grandchild.
Oh, going to see your grandchild, so you're not going to the State House.
My new grandchild, State House later.
Okay. Are you going to be there for the general later?
That's right.
National Guard, and I'm just
go ahead.
Just saying, so people know, the National Guard General will be there. He's going to deliver the State of the Guard address. Major General Gregory Knight, so he'll be there. Adjunct General, Adjutant General. I'm sorry, guys.
How do you say that?
I apologize.
I don't know.
I don't know either. The Vermont National Guard will give the first ever State of the Guard to address the Vermont legislature on Wednesday, and I think that's going to be in the Cedar Creek room. I'll be there. I'm going to be covering it. I'm going to try to get some clips, see if there's anything interesting he's talking about. I'm sure there will be. So I'll be there probably between now and then for the end of the day. Actually, one more quick thing.
Yeah. Later
this evening on X, if you're watching this on X, I'm actually going to be doing a little debate with Augustus Dorico of Rainmaker, the guy who is going around and lobbying for cloud seeding in defense of cloud seeding. Looking forward to that conversation. I've had a lot of talks with Augustus in the last couple of weeks now, and I've learned a lot about him. He's not. A lot of people have been freaking out about what he's up to, and he's not as bad as you might think he is, but I still don't support cloud seeding. So that's what our debate's going to be about.
And if you don't mind me just plugging in real quick, and I don't know if it would be interesting to see what he thinks about it tonight if you guys go there. Part of our bill for the banning geoengineering for the clean air is also checking on the microwave radiation that's coming off of the towers.
Got it.
Because right now, Verizon and AT&T, we know that the microwave radiation is a pollutant. We know that it's not regulated properly. It's not even insurable because we know it's damaged. And one of the things in that bill is we would have an engineer who goes and checks that, because not only are we, of course we all want our cell phone coverage, my goodness, but there's weather monitoring and measuring that is happening on those towers, and that's more radiation. And so that's something that is a pollutant. We know that radiation causes damage, so we want to keep an eye on what's coming off our towers.
So when people get all weird and freaked out about the 5G thing, you know, that's kind of...
It's microwave radiation.
That's what the concern is. And to be fair, too, like, Augustus and I, you know, I like I said, I've talked to him a lot at this point, and my gist of who I think he is, I think he's just a kid, kind of like myself, who found this information and took the ball and ran with it, you know, and that's fine, but now it's time to start having a larger conversation about what geoengineering and weather modification actually is. It's not just cloud seeding. There's other stuff going on, and before we start opening the door to allow people to do cloud seeding, we should be talking about some of the other stuff that's happening. So that's kind of going to be my conversation with him, and the debate, I'm going to be trying to convince him to join the fight as opposed to being part of the solution, right? Which you're not part of the solution. This is the problem.
Right.
And
also
actually,
so connected to the climate aspect. And that's where when I talked to Chair Sheldon, she's the chair of the House Environment Committee, and we were going through this bill, which I worked really hard on with my rep. And I just said, if we're going to be talking about climate and we're going to be talking about all the weather events, this has got to be part of the conversation.
Of course.
It really does.
It does. And if it is happening, if there are plans for it to be happening, you know, and I view myself, as I've reviewed to get ready for this debate with him, I've started to kind of like reevaluate even some of my own positions on geoengineering, where like I've had to come to this conclusion where it's like, no, I don't think we should ever be doing it, and if it ever is happening, it should be like direct order of the President of the United States using it as if you were using a weapon like a nuclear bomb, right? Which I wouldn't want to see either. And once we set the precedent that this is something that we're just going to allow to happen, to help the farmers, right? No, I don't believe that. And not only that, like I've just come to this conclusion where it's like, I don't believe it should ever be happening. And the biggest reason I feel that way is because then you can never come back and say, oh, Paul Bean said that we should do this, because it will go wrong.
Oh yeah, it will.
It will go wrong. It already has gone wrong.
Exactly.
It's in history has gone wrong. I mean, all the way back to the 40s, I can cite floods that have happened because of cloud seeding accidents. You know, so you'll look back on this and be like, yeah, Paul said that we shouldn't do this, and we did it.
And that's the ethics piece has got to be covered. And internationally, what some countries are doing who just don't care.
No, in China and Russia, and you know, there's a whole larger conversation to be had too with like what they're pushing with Greenland, and like you know, I think, and just as a final point, and we do need to wrap it up, but as a final point, you know, they're pushing this Greenland thing and Canada thing on us in the United States, and part of me kind of agrees with it. Part of me is like, what are you guys talking about? Because we're still in the Middle East, we're still in Europe, we're still in all. So we're going to expand further into these places. Like, how's that going to work? But if they were really serious, like, all right, let's just like isolate and create our own thing here, I'd be interested in that. But I don't think that's what's happening. I think that there's 12.5% of the world's population, which that is considered to be the global West, and the 87.5% of the rest of the world wants what the West has. The question is, where are we going to get the resources to do it? Canada, Greenland, the Arctic Circle, and it's getting more and more obvious to me and to others that, yeah, that's exactly what's going on.
That's the battle.
That's the battle, and that's why they're fighting for this. And, you know, I think they're melting the ice caps on purpose with geoengineering. They've admitted to this in Russia. So
interesting.
It's a larger conversation. It's all starting to kind of like, I'll give the vice president props. I mean, they're not saying, yeah, we're melting the ice caps on purpose, but they are being very blunt. We're going here for national security purposes. We want the land and resources and minerals because we don't want China and Russia to have them, who are our enemies.
And that's always been the battle. And that's where I would go back to, like,
we're humans. Like,
I know.
Like,
and some people who are so out of control, but that's where I'd go back to that Bernie Sanders message of, like, if people want to actually resist tyranny, be involved in Vermont and make sure we're watching out for our businesses, make sure we're making sure that these bad laws are getting corrected that are not going to help the local people here in Vermont. And I think that's the most effective way we can do it versus going and screaming and screaming and screaming into the wind and not taking the action here to protect each other and our economy and our environment.
No,
Yeah,
I completely agree. So with that, I
Thank
think
you, Paul.
probably a good point to wrap up the show. Anything else you want to add before we wrap
No,
it up?
I'm good. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone out there who is viewing. We appreciate it. We love having viewers. You guys make this what's so awesome. And with that, I'll just say a quick pitch to you. If you're not already a subscriber to Vermont Daily Chronicle, please become a sustaining subscriber for just $9 a month. You can support free speech in Vermont. We give it out for free because we love what we do. We love sharing the information, but we hope that you love it too, and we hope that you think it's worth something with monetary value, because we think so. We think it's invaluable work that we're doing. It's priceless,
Yes.
and we hope you do too. So please consider it's $108 a year. That's just 30 cents a day to support free speech in Vermont. I hope that pitch I just gave was good. I've been practicing in the shower, so no, I'm just kidding. I haven't been. But anyway, thank you for tuning in, everyone. We hope you have a great, what is today, Wednesday afternoon, and I'll see you all on Friday for Friday at 4 with Guy Page right here in the 802 Scoop studio. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.